Welcome. This is part 2 of our conversation on the power of words. My guest is Ntsika Nogela. We are delving deeper, exploring the lasting effect of words and how we can use our words to build, edify, and uplift ourselves and those around us. I want to talk about something that is really personal here. It's something I observed when I was growing up. And I don't know whether it's a culture or it was an environment. But when people used to comment on my looks without consent, that really, really hurt. As a result, I am always careful that when I talk to kids, I don't comment about how they look, how imperfect this and that and that. Do you think in some cultures it's become accepted that you can tease a child and they will know that you are playing and it won't affect them?
Yeah, it brings up very, very painful experiences for me personally. In the culture that I come from, when a baby is born, people are quite comfortable saying, "Oh, mampinyana," meaning she's ugly.
No, man.
Oh, yeah.
It's said jokingly.
Apparently. But I can tell you, in my generation, I mean, I've got a friend who had a similar experience, and I know someone as well, somebody that I know, an acquaintance, who has actually even written about her experience with that and how it hurt her because the child was too young to even know what was going on, right?
Now that's the mother of the baby.
That's the mother of the child. I mean, can you imagine having given a birth to a child? And so in my culture, where I come from, there is a sense that is how a child is brought up. I did not grow up with children being called pretty like we do our children today. That you're so beautiful, darling. No, we didn't grow up like that. It's not done. It's not done. And I can tell you, it would really be interesting to find out from others what it does to you later on in life when you grew up knowing that you are, I mean, there's actually even names for them. Mantu, which means a dark child. That's quite scarring, I think.
As if it's something that is unacceptable.
So,
like for me, it was everyone commented about my feet. And I don't have the prettiest feet. And to this day, it took me a lot of work to like my feet, but I was so sensitized to that at a very young age, and it really hurt.
Just like me, I mean, I've got thin legs, so I'm told. And for the longest time, I didn't wear skirts. I didn't wear skirts for the longest time.
Because I feel like people were not seeing me
absolutely
as Mzi. All they cared about was my feet, which in their standards were not perfect and not acceptable.
Absolutely. And so it shapes everything about you. It shaped the way I dressed, the clothes I bought. I've never been confident walking around in shorts or short skirts. It's never been part of my life. And yet growing up, raising a daughter and a son, I want them to accept every part of their body, and I celebrate every aspect of their bodies because it's who you are. You're not going to change it. And I don't want to raise children who have body issues, right?
So you had to face on that, okay, I struggled with this, but now I have kids
to change
and,
it.
And I have to embrace who I am.
Absolutely. Well, not really embrace who I am because I think I'm still struggling with it today. You know, it's something that really never goes away. You know, it really doesn't. It really doesn't. You might at some point, like I have, where my husband is always very encouraging. Oh no, you need to. You get confidence in that, you know. But deep down, you know, I'm still not comfortable with this. Because it was said at such a formative stage of your life. It's something that was ingrained in you. And so it stays with you. And it's very important that we are cognizant of that. Body shaming
Body shaming has been so normalized in some cultures.
It has been.
And it breaks people.
It does.
Now we have adults who are not confident, adults who are self-conscious, And it goes back to what was said when they were young.
Absolutely, Msi. But I must say, when you first spoke to me about this topic of words, I started thinking about it and I wondered, what have words meant to me?
Yeah.
When you raised that topic, and I remember really my first kind of interaction with that subject. And it was in conversation, I think, with my father. We were speaking about names and how one thing that I can say our cultures have managed to do beautifully is how names that they give their children. That for me was so powerful because in our cultures, your name embodies the dreams of that family.
I love it. That's so true, actually. Think about it.
And yet, the opposite is true.
Oh.
Sometimes they do name. When a child is not liked or wanted in a family, they are given certain names. You look at such things and you're like, how can a people get it so right and so wrong at the same time? it's just, and so that was my starting point with this topic. Then started moving outwards from there and saying, okay, if a name can do that, what does a word then do as well? So words, because words are essentially things that we name. Talking is something that we name. The activity of what do they mean? What do they carry? What do they communicate to the next person? And so for me, words, the transmitter determines what they're giving with that word.
Yeah, so your heart is in the word.
Your heart, your
determines
energy, your power, your everything. You're the transmitter. You're determining how do I want this to be received?
So I would say broken people who have not done the work will say words that break other people. And people who are edifying.
Not necessarily, Mzi.
I mean, in terms of if they have not dealt with their brokenness and they take it as normal.
But it's because sometimes people just don't know that words have that power.
Exactly.
To them, it's just words.
So broken?
I don't know. The
spreading
issue is
brokenness with their words.
We need to also, they need to be at a point where they realize that they're broken.
But the fact is that they are, right?
We don't know that.
So do you mean that someone who is whole, someone who is full of love, someone who is full of kindness will intentionally just go out there and say hurtful, nasty things that are not building, that are not kind? Because I tend to think that out of the fullness of your heart, your words flow.
Let me give you an example. Let me speak about what we just spoke about, which is when adults will be playing with a newborn child and calling them ugly.
Yeah.
Until we raised it as a problem, at least in my generation or the people that I know of, there was no bad intentions or malice. It was just how they were raised.
But what if I say the way they were raised, they accepted it, but it was a dysfunction. It didn't make it right that they did not know it.
Absolutely.
But they were broken that way, and now they're spreading that brokenness forward.
But can I tell you, also we need to be aware of the fact that as we evolve, we're constantly redefining who we are as a people.
Yeah.
So brokenness is something that came not too long ago, where we identified that, okay, people behave in this manner if they're broken from their past, right? So all of these things, they were my father used to say the most beautiful thing. He says to me, humans are not born with a bag of practices and culture.
Yeah.
We evolve, and as we evolve, we find new ways of dealing with things that we're faced with.
Hopefully we get better.
With the hope that we're getting better, right? And that's the thing. And so even with, I can tell you, the people that did say this to me, there was no malice there. I know now, there really was no malice there. It was just something that they thought was correct because it was done to everybody else. I mean, if you remember in our villages, my cousin had, those little bumps at the back of your head. They had a name for him. One had a small head. They had a name for him. It was just normal behavior. When I got into psychology, I realized, hang on, none of this was normal.
It takes me back to the concept of exposure.
Yeah, absolutely.
You can have a group of people doing something that is normal to them, but in a bigger scale of the human experience, It's not.
It isn't.
And exposure, hence the importance of exposure. Me talking to you now, I'm being exposed to new thoughts. You're doing psychology. You are exposed to something new. Hence, for me, I think I would say, I don't care if someone had malice or not. If it was wrong, it was wrong. If it's brokenness, it's brokenness.
Well, I think I've always really wanted to have grace for people. I truly always want to give grace. My husband is always saying to my daughter when she comes home with, oh, somebody did this, he will address it the best way he knows how. But he will always say, I'm sure something was going on in that person's life that led them to behave so poorly. And so it allows my daughter to learn to give people grace, to think that really normally, under normal circumstances, human beings should not behave like this. But when a person behaves like this, there's always something happening in the background that you probably don't know or are not aware of.
And that you cannot help sometimes.
And that you cannot help sometimes.
Yeah.
And so that grace allows you to then also receive people's words, or rather interpret them in a way that isn't destructive to you. Because ultimately, Mzi, you determine, and that's what we would love to teach our children. You determine how then the words are said by somebody else, but how you perceive them and how you process them and how you then act on what was said is solely your responsibility.
And certainly, I love the concept of grace, but at the same time, I want my child to know that this is brokenness, this is not right.
Yeah.
Of course, I'm going to forgive that person, because the risk of saying, okay, because someone doesn't have malice, because someone didn't have any bad intentions, maybe then we run a risk of saying, oh, maybe it's normal. Then that's wrong. But grace says, I acknowledge this is...
Absolutely.
This is dysfunctional, this is brokenness.
My husband says, this is wrong.
But I forgive.
You need to consider that you don't know Mzi 100%.
Yeah.
You see 8 hours of Mzi at school, you don't know what happens for the rest of the hours in a day.
That's so powerful.
So this is what you interact with. And this could be a result of what happens in the home, what happens when you're not around. So your grace comes in realizing that what is being said should surely not define this person. You can't define, and I think I'm really cautious where children are concerned, where we have children in school with other children, where what you're teaching, how you're teaching your child to deal with words and things that happen to them determines how they're going to deal with them even in your absence, so later on in life.
Yeah.
Because you're starting to teach, because with children, you start small and then you build on those methodologies and ways of doing things as they grow older, age appropriate. But what you always need to be able to give to a child is the understanding that there's always thousands other things going on. There's always a lot of other things going on in that child's life that you need to consider. They'll kick, they'll push, and then you realize, oh, that child was just going through a lot. And there's a lot that we're going through as families every single day. But I would really love to raise children who are able to show grace.
And who are careful with their words.
They have to be careful with their words, because they need to realize that in the same way that her words hurt them, their words have the possibility of hurting others. And
also know that your words can build.
Absolutely.
Do not hold back when you have to uplift someone, to compliment someone. You might be making their day.
Absolutely.
But our culture tends to say, oh, if someone is doing something that they were supposed to do anyway,
which is so incorrect.
I should not be complimenting them. I should not be thanking them.
But I think words have the power to, and they can also be barriers.
Yeah.
They can be barriers. They can be healers too. Your words can heal.
So you choose.
You really have a choice. You've got a responsibility. Can't believe I'm mentioning my father again, but my father says we all have a responsibility to leave this planet better than what we found it.
Oh, 100%.
Than how we found it. And so that speaks to every aspect of your life. Every single aspect of your life.
To the words that you say.
The words that you say, the way you behave, the things you teach, the things you model. I'm always wondering, if I were to die tomorrow, what will my children have, like in their short years on this planet, what would I like for them to have learned from me? Which would sustain them into their lives without me?
I would like you to summarize for us. I'll tell you what I got from our conversation here. That words are powerful. Words are energy. You can remove the words, but the energy remains there. So before you open your mouth or before you say anything, what is the message that you're trying to convey? What's the intention of these words? What do you want to achieve with these words? And how do you want the other person to feel? Like you were saying right now, how would you want the other person to feel when you use these words? Be it you are correcting them, be it you are giving them a compliment. If we are careless, we can harm people and they have a lasting effect. So what could you leave us with when it comes to the power of words?
Ultimately, Mzi, our words are very tied, are completely tied to the people that we are. So your intention about your life, your intention about who you want to be is directly tied to the words that come out of your mouth. Your words speak your heart. They literally just say what's in your heart. And so when you start sending words out there, you need to then wonder, is this a true reflection of what's coming out of my heart? Because I truly believe that our words help shape the society and communities we find ourselves in. Whether it's your children, whether it's in your parents, your friendships, your words are the one thing that people can take away when they leave from you, ponder, and either change for the better or go into dark places based on what you have said. So that's how important our words are. Your words just really give sound or translate everything that's going on in your heart towards other people.
Thank you so much. And one last question. If I always get feedback that my words break people, my words are not wholesome, do you think I have a duty to look within? Maybe there's something that needs attention.
Like I said, you determine who you are and who you want to be in people's lives. So if that is something that keeps you up at night, then certainly you will want to change that. But ultimately, Ntsika, my true belief is that you determine how you want to position yourself in the world, in people's hearts and lives, and in the communities that you find yourself. It really is your responsibility. I've had this conversation with a couple of friends where we've said there are certain places where you go to, and when you come back from such places, you lie on your bed just before you sleep. You replay everything that was being said because you're wondering, how were my words received? Was my heart felt in my transmission of what I was trying to say? Because maybe that place wasn't very embracing. And so that, for me, it always is an indication that I need to remove myself from such spaces. But there are places where you can, and I think this is what I'm trying to communicate, that even in our words, we need to get to a place where we're authentic.
Yeah.
There's no point in you doing this and saying, no, I'm just going to transmit these words in a certain way, and it is not authentic and it's not authentically you. Because that then becomes a problem for you. Like I'm explaining to you that in places where I feel like I need to replay the entire evening or dinner that I was at, I know I need to remove myself from that place.
Yeah.
And not go back to it.
Yeah. Because
it means I was not authentically myself if I have to replay conversations and wonder how they were received. In a place where you're authentic, where your heart is going out there, and as you speak from your heart, then it's a safe and comfortable place.
This was wonderful. I enjoyed it. And I've learned so much.
I'm grateful for this conversation. I'm grateful for the opportunity to just really reflect, because these were my reflections and my thoughts and looking back as to my own evolution as a person.
Thank you, Sister Nell.
You're most welcome, Z.